In today's episode, we are going through the PCA to debate our two sides. The work done by LE is certainly in question by the defense. What seems like sound evidence in the PCA and why? Carlos will tell us. What seems suspicious or questionable in the PCA? Kim will tell us. As always, everything we discuss is for entertainment and is speculation. Please like and subscribe and definitely join our discussion in the comments. If you're ready, let's get into it. Welcome back to Typically Unique. I'm Kim Aponte and I'm here with my husband, Carlos.
Hello.
On today's episode, we are going through the PCA. We're not going to read it all. I have some things highlighted that we're going to discuss. Especially, we watched the 3D videos that were made based off the PCA in our last episode. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. They're really good videos by Asget Industries. And because of the recent hearings, some new information that's been coming out, we thought it would be interesting to raise some questions now on this PCA.
So now that we have some hindsight, right?
Right.
Now that we had the PCA for a while, we've referenced it a couple times, but now that some of the hearings have come out and some things have been questioned, we could go back and take a look and say, well, this is what they used, for the arrest warrant. So, it's interesting to see like some of the stuff that they talk about in the PCA, what's, being questioned now by the defense team. And I know you have a ton of things that you want to
lots of notes, so
point out, but I will start this episode from my position that
Sure.
Nothing has changed for me. I still think, Brian Kohberger is the right person to have in custody at this point, but bring it on and let's see what you got.
Well, I guess I should also say that we're both logical people waiting for the trial, right?
Yeah.
We're both, see what happens in the trial.
Right.
But in the meantime, as we're listening to everything, we have our opinions, and my opinion is he's looking more innocent, and your opinion is they have the right guy. So.
Yes.
All right, so the PCA is stamped with a date of December 29th, 2022. So it's the second paragraph starts off with that on the day that they showed up to the scene. Okay, so on November 13th at approximately 4 p.m., Sergeant or Corporal Payne and Sergeant Blaker responded to the 1122 King Road residence, and they were there to assist with scene security and processing of a crime scene. So right off the bat, I just thought that was a late response if the 911 call went in at noon. I don't know.
So, is that your position on that statement?
Yes.
Okay. So I was prepared for that one because I read the PCA as well. And I know that you had concerns about people getting there late. First responders are first responders. Detectives, investigators, they aren't first responders. They don't, take the call and come in immediately, especially the way the call was sent in, supposedly. I haven't heard the 911 tapes. I don't think they've been made public, but
No, they're not released.
But I heard that the 911 call mentioned someone was unconscious. So
Right.
that doesn't elevate it to a level of there's someone murdered in our building or our house that would have if someone's unconscious, hey, maybe we'll send some EMTs. Police will make their way to the scene, but maybe not at high speed with lights going on.
So I would give them 30 minutes to change from an unconscious person to, oh my gosh, what do we have here? Like, doesn't take long to arrive on the scene and change
realize
the code or whatever. Yeah. And that's another interesting point. Why haven't they released the 911 call? Aren't those supposed to be public record?
If the case isn't under seal, you know, I mean,
I guess.
but I guess the point I want to make about
Why hide it?
the two people that are referenced in the PCA, that's not untypical. I probably use a double negative there, but
Atypical.
that is,
Like our
I'm trying to
favorite
use
show.
typically unique as much as possible. But I think it's typical for detectives to come to the scene a little bit later after it's been secured and things of that nature. I don't typically think that they arrive, you know, as a first responder.
So then another thing we were starting to have a debate on before was the Idaho State Police were there first. And I told you, if something happened at our house, our local police better be here first. Like, why would the state police be the ones responding first?
I have an answer for that as well. So if geographically where we're located, there is a state police unit right there down the street, probably closer than the APD that is in downtown. So could it happen? Yes. Is it a cause for conspiracy? Probably not.
It
But
just makes it look like they were already there setting up shop, had the scene prepped before these guys decided to roll on in. But,
again, who was responding first, who was available for maybe a low-level call. Once people got there and realized what was going on, they probably called in the cavalry at that point. But
and apparently it was the same for the coroner too. She didn't, or the medical examiner, whoever shows up at that time, she didn't get there till 4 or 5 p.m. either.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
typical.
I just, we talked about this before. I work on do your job.
Well, and another thing too is there is, a certain amount of, we can't touch the crime scene. We have to have everything secure before these people come. And then when they do come, like the medical examiner, they may do a bunch of work first before detectives can even get in there. So there's a bunch of that going on, but I don't find it, concerning that happened. But
Page 1, paragraph 2.
I like that though. I want to start out with a bang.
So then they go on walking through the crime scene, how they entered, how they came upon the victims. And I just wanted to note that the way that they describe the deceased wounds, like with Xana, it was an edged weapon. And that's all they mentioned, just, finding her body and edged weapon. But then with Ethan, I know a lot of people have questioned, because there's a part that's redacted. So, like, why go into more detail about him than the other 3 victims? I'm assuming it would be because of injuries and things like that. That's what it looks like. Then with his, it said sharp force injuries. And then with Kaylee and Maddie, it said stab wounds. Now, I looked all of those up, like terminology that they would use, and basically it looked like they all mean the same thing. But I don't know. A lot of people are questioning, because Kaylee's dad said wounds didn't match, or their method of, things didn't match. So that statement has been made publicly. But I don't know.
I like to say a little something to that too.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
All right.
Going back and forth.
Going back and forth. So
my conspiracy questions and your Gilter response.
Gilter, yeah.
I was just telling him about the nicknames Pro Burgers and Gilters.
Yeah, I really wanted to be a Pro Burger, because that's a
that
cooler name.
Yeah.
But I am a Gilter. But so let me tell you a quick little story. So yesterday, I had a headache, and that headache was just giving me a headache, and I could not stand that headache at all. Right? Seems kind of silly. Yesterday, my head hurt because I had a headache, and the pounding in my head was almost unbearable.
Oh, because he's such a literary writer that he had to change up his words.
Isn't it a little silly to just kind of use the same terminology over and over and over again?
Ultimately, that's what it is.
It is, right.
Still. here.
Okay.
All right.
You didn't like my headache? All right.
Not yet. Okay, your point. All right, so then he later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Mogan's right side when viewed from the door. The sheath was later processed and had K-Bar, USMC, and the United States Marine Corps Eagle Globe and Anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. That's pretty descriptive.
So I want to ask you a question, not about the PCA, but a little bit of some of the issues that I think the pro-burgers have had, about the sheath itself. When is he stating that was discovered in the PCA?
It just says, I also later noticed.
Okay.
And so I don't know where it was reported, but there have been reports that it was on a second go through.
Exactly.
So, and especially I'm thinking if the state police were in there first, they didn't see it. I mean, I've heard it was under a blanket next to,
So if you heard 10 things, 9 of them are a lie. Or not a truth, right? So if you heard 10 things...
Even the things that are in the PCA.
Yeah. So if you hear 10 things, one of them has to be the truth, right? You would hope one of them would be the truth. But we can easily state that 9 of them are not true because there's probably one truth. So if you're hearing a bunch of different stories, if that makes it fit a narrative, then I'll use it. But you have to come back to the fact that this sheath was found, right? Whether it was second one or, 2 hours in, depending on when they could move the body or whatever, however that whole thing, because, again, it was underneath her, it was beside her, it was under the blanket, it was on top of the blanket, it was in plain view, it was hidden, again, 10 things stated, 1 probably is true. And you'll probably see that with the photos that they've taken at the crime scene where it actually was. Mm-hmm. So we need that. But I think my thing with that is because there is this conspiracy of a setup, if it was not found until much later, and that's been some of the narrative that's been out there.
In the condition of it. We don't know the condition of it.
It lends itself to the conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
It was found later. Bunch of people are in there. Did someone bring this in? I mean, they would have had to known that this would have happened by knife, and get this on, Kohlberger's DNA on there. But it does lend itself to a bit of a conspiracy and would,
I'm sure that it took a lot of mental preparation to go into that room to do any
I can't even imagine.
of work. So saying later, I mean, how many times did they probably just peek from the door? I mean, just to be realistic about it. So yeah, I do see that.
And we have a little older than college age children, and I couldn't imagin.
Right. Having to look at someone else's kids.
Even if, just knowing the age range and how we interact and, that would be
horrendous.
Exactly.
So with the knife sheath, they said that later the state lab was able to find a single source male DNA suspect profile left on the button snap of the knife sheath. Now, a lot of people, it's probably speculated that it would be a brass button. And a lot of people have talked about how DNA would not, I don't know if it's the skin cells that hold the DNA, whatever, wouldn't last on, like brass doesn't hold that. It's very, it would degrade it quickly.
It's probably acidic.
I think I heard like 6 hours or something. But this is 12, maybe it was 4 hours, 12 hours later. So just 12 hours later, finding it, let alone getting it to a lab, doing the testing, all of that. So maybe that just helped in the condition of what it was in when they got it. Because I do know they had a hard time. Well, apparently they got the profile okay, but I know they had to send it to a second lab to do the genealogy stuff or the further DNA testing. All right, so then they interviewed the two surviving roommates, and they said that they were inside the home at the time. And there has been so much discussion about that. A lot of people think, no way, like they weren't even there, things like that. And, well, this PCA better be, this is what's going to be used in court. These are the facts. This is why we arrested him. But it just made me question how... when the prosecutor came out in like 3 hearings ago and said there was no stalking, and although that word is not used in this PCA, so you can say they didn't lie, they didn't use that word in here, but it certainly was implied when we get to that part about how many times he was in the neighborhood and things like that.
I implied it in our last episode. But does it meet the legal definition of stalking? So was he legally correct in that response? Probably. Was Koberger familiar with these people? Probably. Well. But I want to go back to what you first started with. There was some question about them being in the house. And I think, it's been stated over and over that they both were in the house. They do have a statement from one, that both were in the house. And
yeah, and interesting, we've only heard a statement from one, and then there was, I think it's more than a rumor that they had requested, because at one point they were going forward with the trial, and when they thought they were going to have a preliminary hearing before they went to the grand jury, and that the defense wanted Bethany, the one that was on the first floor, supposedly she has exculpatory evidence, but that's not in here. And she's not used in any of this. So that 1 and 1.
The one on the first floor?
Bethany in the bottom.
The bottom. Okay.
She was not used.
Gotcha.
Dylan on the second floor is the one that was.
So the one had no eyewitness to the account and didn't hear anything. Has exculpatory evidence. Yeah,
and if you want to hear some crazy ideas about her, there's a lot out there.
Yeah, but that doesn't mesh with the reality that 4 people were killed. Doesn't mess with the reality that 4. How is she going to say, "Oh, he didn't do it"? How?
Oh no, but didn't she say anything about what she heard or what she saw that should have been used in here?
No, if she's on the first floor, she apparently didn't hear anything.
She had a window.
She apparently didn't hear anything.
Apparently. All right, so then it just goes on to all the roommates' whereabouts that night. That's been reported on over and over and over again. So then it's talking about the DoorDash driver. Okay, so the wording is approximately 4 a.m. Law enforcement identified the DoorDash delivery driver who reported this information. So reported the information that I made the DoorDash delivery for Xana. So we don't know. It doesn't say she accepted it or she came to the door. It just, the fact is it was for her. Yeah. That's really all that's fact. So why is the DoorDasher a secret? Like, that is a big question. So I wrote down a whole bunch of theories. Would you have a response first?
Well, I want to hear your theories because this is a wild card to me, this DoorDash driver, because either he was
or she,
we believe it's a he, but was the luckiest person or the unluckiest person that night.
Or involved.
But according to you.
Apparently not.
But yeah, I mean, right now we have one eyewitness that's been identified in the PCA that says, one person was in the house that matched Brian Koberger's description. Not apparently the DoorDash driver's description.
Right, but to your point, if you want to say Bethany can't say anything in the PCA because she's in the bottom floor, Dylan also can't say anything except for what she saw when she opened those doors.
Right.
So she also...
Tall, athletic, not big, but...
Well, I mean, what she heard, she could have said a whole lot more about what she heard, but my point is there could have been more people in the house that she didn't see because they didn't walk by her door when she opened it.
Sure.
Yeah. Anything more on your point of view about the DoorDash?
No, I
driver?
want to hear
Okay.
some of your questions because
So-
I think that is a wild card.
I thought it was interesting in the 3D modeling video that we watched, that was the exclusive one that hadn't been released. It starts off with the DoorDash driver car in front of the house and then a picture of BK. And I thought, is she like implying, or is that like a little Easter egg that maybe he was the DoorDash driver? I don't know. That's a lot of people have talked about that. Is the DoorDash driver an informant? Like an informant, I have been involved in the drug ring and I'm now having to inform, and this was like a decoy to like do something at the house or something like that. Or it could be just an informant. I gave information about what I saw while I was there, and now I'm scared and I'm being protected. Like it could be that. Those are my thoughts. Is that another potential suspect? Like I'd be like, if we knew who that person was, like well, that's not true because we do know who the private driver is, and people talk about him. But I mean, I don't know if he's gotten harassed or anything like that.
Was the any pronouns used for the DoorDash driver?
No.
Okay. So
I did tell you there was speculation about the female, the girl who would go into the house with the parties. I'll use party supplies. There was rumor that she was a DoorDash driver.
Okay. So maybe I'm taking a different than what you've mentioned about the DoorDash driver. For me, the DoorDash driver to be in that area and leave literally 1 to 2 minutes before allegedly, Koberger drives back into the area and then ultimately parks his car and commits the crime. Without those two passing on that very small
You would think
street,
they would pass.
yeah. I mean, a minute's a long time. Hold your breath.
Yeah.
It's a long time. I mean, again, everything's perspective. So a car could be out of the area, out of that driveway or that driveway, and another car could come in and they probably didn't even see each other. It's possible. But for it to be that close, and especially if you're getting a DoorDash, I know how I am when I get a DoorDash. I'm either hanging outside or I hear the doorbell and I go grab it immediately, standing by the door to go get it. And then I'm consuming it right away.
Right.
I mean, why make the order at 3:30 in the morning to have it delivered at 4 in the morning for it to just sit there? Because according to the PCA, everybody was in bed.
Everybody's asleep, right? So apparently not. But then, well, no, in here it did say that Xana was on TikTok. But you know how TikTok is.
She was in her bed. She probably wasn't asleep, but she was in her bed.
And apparently TikTok was going on her phone.
Yeah.
But that's an app where if it's open, it'll just play over and over and over again. I'm sure everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions about that DoorDash driver.
I just wonder. I know they showed a bag. I know I saw a picture of a bag of DoorDash. I don't know if it was a manufactured one. It was actually one from the crime scene photo. I don't know that for a fact, but I did see a DoorDash bag.
It's supposed to be Jack in the Box.
That didn't look to be opened. So I don't know.
Well, because apparently the person came in right after that. You wouldn't have time to eat it.
Yeah.
If that's the right time.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later in this. Okay, so just like we saw in the 3D videos, the path of going through. This is according to Dylan. So Dylan was interviewed, and she said that at 4 a.m., she was awoken by what she stated was likely Gonsalves playing with her dog. So, that first door, that would make you think the person went upstairs, opened the door. We don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
But if that's the first thing she's going to say, I heard, I didn't hear anybody at the door.
Right.
I didn't hear, this is what she's stating, apparently. So they're making it seem like the first sounds come from the third floor.
Yes.
with, doesn't say a bark. You would assume maybe a bark, but I don't know. Maybe that's why that 3D model had that first, like going into that room first. Then it says that Dylan heard Kaylee say something to the effect that there's someone here, but they also think that could have been Xana that said that. And then this is where it says she was on TikTok until approximately 4:12.
Who's she?
Xana.
Okay.
Xana was on TikTok until 4:12.
Okay.
So if it's Kaylee upstairs on the 3rd floor saying someone's here, I mean, I guess that could be out the window too. But if there's noise from the dog and it was someone up there, so that means someone's up on the 3rd floor first. Could
They
take
hear
it
the
that
door
way.
open, the dog's making puppy noises.
Could take it that way.
Yeah.
If it's Xana that said it, she's down more, and their room was way like secluded. I don't even know if that room would have. I guess it would have an outside window, but you would make it. It would make it seem like maybe another person in the house, more than one. She's hearing someone here now. I don't know. It just gave me a lot of questions about
Yeah.
that.
I can't make that leap, but go ahead.
Don't be dismissive.
I'm just not making that leap.
Okay, so then she opens her door because that was the first time she opened her door and she heard someone's here, dog, playing with the dog. Second time she opens her door, she hears crying coming from Xana's room. And then she hears someone say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." That is such a crazy thing to have heard.
Yeah.
What do you think that is? Do you think that would be a perpetrator saying that? Do you think...
On that, I don't know because, now you're trying to get into the psyche of a criminal mind. And is he trying to keep them from attacking him?
Yeah,
hey, I'm here to help.
Calm.
Keep things kind of cool or, because maybe he was surprised that they were up and a little bit more mobile than the first 2 people that he interacted with, that I think that was more of a surprise attack for just some of the things that I've heard, but probably trying to, hey, no, I'm, here to, and then surprise attack. But that's difficult because, you're trying to get in the mind of somebody
Right.
who's in the throes of something pretty vicious and
It's just a weird thing
Yeah.
to have heard.
it is, yeah.
It makes me think, like you're saying, kind of trying to fool somebody,
Yeah.
right? But to me, that's something that someone might say if I know you. You're recognizing me, but you know that I'm here, like something's bad has been going on, and then you see somebody and they're like, "Oh, it's okay, I'm here to help."
Yeah, could be.
But that kind of a thing too.
Yeah.
And I have heard discussion about that online.
That leads to stalking.
Okay, so then there is distorted audio picked up on a nearby house, and that picks up. It sounded like voices or a whimper followed by a loud thud. A dog can be heard barking numerous times, and that's starting at 4:17. So I know in our other video I had said the dog didn't start barking until 4:17, but that's just when it was picked up on camera.
So I want to say something to that because in reference to the animation we saw in the last episode, I didn't realize the house that had the Ring camera was on that side of the house. The dog and where Ethan and Xana were.
Yes.
So that was good to see that.
I think it was about 50 feet, within 50
to
feet.
see that animation of showing. That's why you didn't hear anything from, well, you didn't hear anything, but it didn't pick up as much, if anything,
From the other side.
from the other side. But these two were on that side of the house. So yeah, you would expect that, we're on the north side of our house right now. If we're having, a loud discussion, this neighbor may hear us, but that one over there isn't going to hear us. So,
Right.
so that made sense once I could see the proximity of the house that had the Ring camera.
So then here's Dylan's words about the description of the person. She said she opened the door for the third time, so she did open it 3 times. She heard the crying, saw a figure clad in black. Wait, DM stated she opened her door for the 3rd time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. She described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The whole clad in black, I mean, we just all have to agree that no 20-year-old is using that word clad. Like, so is it okay that the officer just kind of inserted his own wording into that? Because I would bet tons of money that's not what she said. And couldn't there have been any other description, more description? I don't know.
Probably. I mean, I think they're trying to give the MVP here, right? The minimal viable product. They're trying to give as least amount of information as possible.
In the PCA.
In the PCA.
Then there's the whole frozen shock phase, and then she said that he walked towards the sliding glass door, so then they assume that's when he left the scene. And
credit to you, again, on the previous video. If you haven't watched it, please watch it, because we're taking a lot of that information and bringing it into this discussion. But the animation kind of shows where Dylan would have been standing.
Yeah.
When, just in relation to how the house is laid out, when Koberger or the suspect came out, and they could have been literally face to face, probably 5 feet apart from each other. So even though it's low lighting, you're seeing something that, is probably going to be etched in your brain for the rest of your life.
And only for a few seconds.
Yeah.
So I get it.
But just to be that close, and, luckily she wasn't attacked, that they ended up leaving. The only, kudos to you that you stopped that screenshot right there, to kind of show.
I slowed the speed way
and you
down,
slowed the speed,
yeah, because it was really, fast on the normal speed. So I slowed it down.
Yeah,
and
so
took some screenshots.
Yeah, so take a look at that, because, boy, just to be that close, and now in retrospect, after she woke up, after she made the call, after all that happened, and realizing, oh my gosh, I could not be here. How horrifying that is for her.
Mm-hmm. So then there's 3 lines that said, after DM's statements, review of forensic downloads from the roommates' phones, video of a suspect video as described below leads investigators to believe the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. So I don't know if that would be what made them change the time. So remember, when they first came out, they said right away that they thought this happened between 3 and 4 a.m. So they wrote this on December 29th. I'm just thinking they changed the time. That this can't be the only information that made them change that time. There's other information.
Yeah, videos.
I don't see how this information makes you like it's just because of the DoorDash.
Well, DoorDash
just because of the
videos,
DoorDash driver that they won't tell us who it is.
Yeah, DoorDash videos, TikTok.
This might be one of those moments where I think I know what I'm thinking, but I'm not saying it clearly. So if this is resonating with everybody, let me know what you think about that. Okay.
I think the time changes. Yeah, probably on day one, you have a window, or you think, hey, this is when this probably could have taken place. But you get evidence. You do interviews, which all doesn't happen within the first 10 minutes of arriving there. It takes time to get that information and put it all together. So if you heard something on day one, I don't expect it to be ironclad. I expect them to do their due diligence and get us a better sequence of events or timeline or whatever it is after doing some due diligence.
But you spoke to this on a previous episode. Then don't say anything. Just say it happened during the night. Like, why narrow it down to 1 hour of time? that's what makes it look like they did have evidence. They must have had something that made them think between 3 and 4. But then everything about Brian Koberger would have to be between 4 and 5. I don't know. That's what a lot of people think. Okay, so then during the processing of the crime scene, investigators found a latent shoe print. Oh, this drives me insane. This was located during the second processing of the crime scene by the ISP forensic team. So that's the state police. The detected shoe print showed a diamond-shaped pattern similar to the pattern of a Vans type shoe sole. Okay. Latent makes me think like it's hidden, right? So it's not visible. You can't see it with your naked eye. They didn't notice it right away on the first go-around of things. I'm just thinking out of there had to have been other footprints in the red stuff all over the house. Like, there had to have been. But this is what they're mentioning in here. Because if not, then that scene was cleaned.
So if and I'm just hypothesizing here, doesn't say where the latent shoe print was found.
I believe right outside Dylan's room.
Okay. So as he was leaving, so after everything was done outside of Dylan's room, which is scary, right? Because she closed the door just in time to get back to her bed.
But it could have been a shoe print that's been there for a year or 3 months because she wears Vans. Every kid in that house probably wore Vans.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that would say it's from the past 24 hours, if it was in blood, right? The blood didn't exist there 3 months ago or when the last frat party was at the...
But my understanding, I don't know, I have to look this up. I should have done my homework ahead of time. To me, latent is, it's hidden. Like, it takes a special chemical to...
Yeah.
So, just like they do, like, the black light stuff, like, doing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the only thing that marks it as within the past 24 hours, if it has someone's blood that was stabbed, right?
Okay, so to me, then that's really suspicious because... Are you going to wear Van tennis shoes to go do something like that?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, too.
I picture boots.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, too, was when, and they probably didn't say it, but I'm assuming when they found that, they're like, when you go raid his house through a search warrant, Brian Koberger, you need to look for some Van tennis shoes.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. So that would be interesting what happens at trial. Were those found? Or, I mean, some of the theory is that a lot of, he went to his stargazing to throw away all of these, items that were covered in blood and, the clothes he was wearing and all that. So he could go back to college and look normal. So.
Maybe. I do think that there was information about him buying like some kind of one-piece.
Oh, like a Dexter type of thing.
Suit or something like that, too. But I do believe that the shoe was only like a size 10. Like, and he's like 6 foot tall. That'd be a pretty small shoe size for someone his size. But I don't know. That's interesting.
But you'd certainly, I guess the last point on that is you would have to rule out everybody who was in the building. Right?
Yeah, find the shoe. Like, yeah, everybody that lived in the house or...
And then all the investigators.
All the frat people.
And the frat boys that came over and, yeah.
People who, were in that house. I mean, it's not impossible. So then the next part's just about them doing the video canvassing and there's big questions about cameras that they got, how many they didn't get, areas that they didn't get. And he puts this in here, but then there's no date of when they did it. I just kind of think that's important documentation. When did you start doing that? And I think the defense is questioning that. Because if you wait too long, is the video still going to be there? They're going to record over.
Probably not.
So I think that date is very important, and it's missing. So, Detective Kim.
I don't disagree with that.
So this is when we get to suspect vehicle 1, when they start seeing it on these cameras that they collect. It just gives the routes, and if you really want to understand it, again, go back and watch our previous video. That it shows the routes and the times and everything. So he says, based off my experience as a patrol officer, this is a residential neighborhood with a very limited number of vehicles that travel in the area during the early morning hours. Upon review of the video, there are only a few cars that enter and exit this area during this time frame. See, and that's why I told you that's not true. I wanted to watch like those other videos that are out there, maybe as an episode, because
what's a limited number to you?
There.
So again, this is all about perspective. Okay. So what would be an enormous amount?
I don't know if I got going through your neighborhood in the night.
Yeah. At
it would be
3 and 4 in the morning.
If there's like, a car going by every 5 to 10 minutes. 5 minutes.
Okay, so that's 5 minutes.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to put a number on it, but yeah, I don't. I just thought that was weird to even say that in here. Like, why? What purpose does that even have? It's easy for us to pick him out because that was the only car.
Yeah, like, hey, there's 5 cars that showed up on video in this hour time frame. Okay, we see a DoorDash driver. We see somebody who came home from a bar very late, and we're going to look into that guy because we saw him wobbling to his house. But otherwise, this isn't a pass-through area. This is a destination lane that they're going to. Mm-hmm. So how many of those people are still out, right? So 5 of those 50 residents, max, 10%. I'm going to say 10% of those people aren't asleep at 4 a.m, right? So, 5 cars have passed in this area, 1 car multiple times, 4 cars zoom in, do their thing, park for the night, or drop off some DoorDash and leave. Who am I going to look at? Who are you going to look at as an investigator? What are you going to look at?
I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying how is this evidence? Like, how is this, like, why did you even need to say that? It doesn't matter if there's 100 cars going through there at night, if this is the one that you see at this time doing these turns and doing all the suspicious activity. It doesn't, how many cars there are
He's setting the scene.
Not relevant.
He's setting the scene. Just like if someone said, in our neighborhood, we live in a cul-de-sac that is off of a street that's off of a main road. So we're, very few cars go by our house at 4 a.m. I would say 1, maybe, if we're lucky. Now, there's a road down the street that's connected to, in a neighborhood, to a bigger road that they probably have 10 or 20. But what he's setting is, this isn't a highly traveled thoroughfare, and within the city limits. This is a off the beaten path. And I'm familiar with this area, so I know that there's not a lot of vehicle traffic. There could be a lot of foot traffic, but there's certainly not a lot of vehicle traffic.
We all know he's familiar with that area.
Could be. So I think the PCA is perfectly written in that regard.
Okay. So he says, suspect vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of the King Road residence at approximately 4:20 at a high rate of speed. Next observed traveling. So it says different roads. And then, this part. I believe that suspect vehicle 1 likely exited the neighborhood and then, gives the routes. I just think that is speculative. That's not probable cause evidence saying I believe and it's likely. I don't know.
Does it really matter? Like, he
when
left.
You're arresting somebody?
Yeah, but he left.
I'm
I'm arresting him for the act. I'm not arresting him for what he did afterwards. I'm arresting him for the act.
Well, I just wonder if that's even allowed to be in there.
Well, no. I mean, the I believe, I think, could lend itself to speculation, so I understand.
Just sharing what's in here.
Yep.
Okay, after reviewing the numerous observations of suspect vehicle 1, the forensic examiner initially believed the suspect vehicle, this is the 2011 to 2013, upon further review. That's all they say. So just changed it. So that's getting questioned.
Yep.
That's going to be questioned because there's no evidence in here as to why. Like,
Right.
I noticed that, the headlights didn't match. That's all it would take, would be a simple
Sure.
little statement like that.
Sure. And I can't wait till they get that person on the stand, right? Because it's secondhand information that we heard in the hearing. This guy told me this FBI.
Right,
I want
right.
that agent to be on the stand, and I want to hear his explanation. Why did he, have such a narrow window and then expanded it later?
Yeah, and they were putting a lot of work on the FBI. Like, I
Yeah.
just said this. I
Yeah,
just wrote
yeah,
this
yeah.
in here because the FBI told me.
And I don't want to steal your thunder, but you made up a good point earlier today that I want to make sure we cover. You keep referencing suspect vehicle 1. Do you want to talk to me about suspect vehicle 1?
Well, yeah, I did.
Or is that a
speak
little
about
bit
that.
later?
No. It's already been mentioned.
Okay.
So just, is it commonplace when you're just talking about the suspect's vehicle to just label it automatically 1? Or is it implying there was at one time a suspect vehicle 2 or more?
Right.
But now we've narrowed it down to just this suspect vehicle 1.
Right.
So that
No,
was
I thought that was when you brought that up initially. I was like, I didn't think of that. I think when you gave the answer of, that's how we would just label things anyway, right? Suspect vehicle 1, yada yada, which seems kind of weird. Suspect vehicle is a suspect vehicle,
Right.
especially
there
in
were
this
other
case.
options.
But yeah, it made me say, So not that I want to make your points for you, but it did give me a second of pause that. Were they considering somebody else, and we're
Right.
trying to, disclude or, exclude him and,
Yeah.
maybe get more evidence on this one. So, where'd
That
this
would be
car go?
interesting to find out.
Yeah, where'd this car go? And where did suspect vehicle 2 car go? And
Yeah, what was
Yeah.
if there is a suspect 2 or 3?
maybe it
or
was a
whatever,
DoorDash
what
driver,
is it?
So
Yeah, oh, that's true.
could be suspect vehicle 2. So, but I just, when you brought that up, it made me think of that. So go ahead.
So then they move on to good old Washington State University. So, and finding the car there or what he was doing there. So it says investigators were given access to video footage on the WSU campus. And so they see him at 2:44 in the morning. That night, traveling, they see him again at 2:53 in the morning. And then this is where the car goes towards that State Route 270, connecting Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. And in the last hearing, the defense attorney had big questions about this because she was making it seem like if you turn right, you're going to Moscow. If you turn left, you're heading towards the park he was at, and they did not provide her with any of the video footage that would have been along the route going towards the park. Like, she was really asking for those video cameras, and it didn't seem like they had any footage.
This might be, because we're about halfway through this PCA right now. This might be a good place to pause and maybe get a map, and maybe we could do some StreamYard or something and pull up a map of the area, because I'm a little curious about this too, because they're just stating, I-270 and, King Road and all these things. And it'd be nice to kind of put it in perspective. So maybe we can inlay a map or something while we're talking, and maybe we could just point at certain areas where, between Washington, this stargazing park, all the way to the gas station, back to the house, of points of areas where either we know Brian Koberger was, or where he says he was.
Or this car.
Yeah, or this car was, right. Yeah, so, we have kind of 4 points of interest right now, which is Washington, the murder scene, the gas station, which is a little out of place before the murders happened, and then the park. So I would like to see that perspective, and it may help me better rebut or.
Well, it is timely because we'll just end with this.
Yeah.
At the last hearing, the expert that they had testify said everything that he's seen so far is exculpatory. The defense attorneys have used that word. They've said he's innocent. When you read this, this has been out for a year and,
few months, yeah.
Yeah, a year and a few months. You're like, they've seen him. This is where the car was, this and this.
Or was it?
But now that we know that the defense is trying to prove where she's saying he really was, and they don't have the video surveillance, and if they do have it, they have not given it over. It's buried in a pile of flash drives in the evidence room that someone has to go in there and sort. So very interesting, and this is currently what is happening in the case right now.
Right.
So.
And just so we can't leave that last dig there, just kind of lay there a little bit. We do want to mention that defense attorney has been at the evidence locker 6 times and has been invited back to come and look at anything that they want to. So
they weren't there to watch videos, though. The videos should just be given to them.
Right. Right.
We could go back and forth
and
forever.
According to the people who testified, they've turned everything over to the prosecution, or it's in the evidence locker. So,
and the prosecution says we've given you everything we have.
Yeah. So it's in the evidence locker.
Someone's got some explaining to do. All right, so we're gonna end it here, and we hope you'll join us back for the second part of this.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks.
We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.